Hey everybody, my name is VoodooBae, and I'm bringing darkness to light with alchemizing energy.
All right, welcome. Yes, VoodooBae, I want to welcome you to Alchemizing Energy. Thank you for your time that you're taking to come visit with us today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so I met you on Facebook a long time ago. I would say maybe about maybe 4 years ago.
Many years ago.
4 or 5 years ago. And since then, you've started a cosmetic line and become like a TikTok influencer with over 200,000 followers.
Mhm.
Yes, I'm so proud of that. So proud. So tell us a little bit more about yourself. We came to talk about your upbringing and things like that about the cult-like behavior that you experienced. But before we get into that, I wanted to just get into who VoodooBae is and get into introducing yourself to our audience.
Okay, well, hello YouTube. My name is VoodooBae, or Omitola Iyalaje is my Orisha name. I am a fully initiated Olorisha, daughter of Oshun. I am the owner of VoodooBae Cosmetics. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a business owner. I am also an influencer. My main platform is TikTok, but I've been on Facebook for many years. I built my platform on the restoration of the matriarchy and the dismantling of patriarchy ideology. I'm an advocate for Black women. And, I do many, many things and wear many, many hats. Just depends on which day you catch me on. Sorry, y'all, that's my cat. He's got the zoomies.
Sorry. Yeah, sorry about that. My computer froze up a little bit. So, it's interesting. There's a lot of people that are kind of taking that stance. Since we saw you come out recently, we've seen another young lady, Princella Clark, come out with the same kind of ideology, and a few other content creators. I think Tanya TKO and what's the other girl? I forget what her name is, but she wears the swoop. Her hair's like swooped over. Krista G, or something. G.
Oh, Cynthia G, I think.
Cynthia G, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, there's like a big uprising of females that are, coming out and talking about these things. So what do you think is the main issue that is happening when it comes down to like female and the male patriarchy? What is kind of happening in that realm?
Patriarchy in and of itself is the problem. Give me a problem and I can trace it right back to patriarchy. Give me a societal issue, give me anything in our societal structure, we can trace it right back to the foundation of patriarchy. Patriarchy in and of itself is a psychosis, and it can only breed psychosis. And so everything that you see happening in the world, everything that you see going on in the world is a byproduct of that very foundational.
Looks like we lost some audio. Hello? Did you get a phone call? Yeah, I can't hear you. Your audio went out. Let's see. Let me try to remove and bring it back. Look, that's the Yeah, go leave and come back. Y'all, listen, the patriarchy that mess with the sound, messing with everything, and see, we can't even get the show going without the patriarchy messing with everything. Right. So we're gonna try this again. We're gonna bring her back. But yeah, VoodooBae. From let me tell you a little about how I met VoodooBae. She actually was the person that introduced me to E5. Believe it or not, I was the web developer for Sarah Suit and Setting, and he had gotten into it with Umar Johnson, and I was like, man, I was really trying to like learn more about the Egyptian stuff, and now they're saying that the Medu Neter has not been like, oh, it hasn't been translated. And I said, well, if it hasn't been translated, what's going on? So she was like, maybe you should look into E5. And that's actually how I met VoodooBae. Let's see. Can we hear you now? Let's see. Say
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. We can hear. See the patriarchy trying to mess up our show.
Exactly. They didn't want me exposing them.
Right. See, because you was talking about the patriarchy way before a lot of these other women. Believe it or not, on Facebook, that's actually how I ran into you. Is watching your lives where you were like, giving like, advice and relationship advice and talking about different subjects.
I've been talking about this subject for the better part of 2 decades, to be honest with you. I've been on Facebook. I was on Facebook talking about this for at least 15 years. So it has been awesome and amazing to see the evolution and to finally see women waking up, to finally see this becoming like a movement.
Yes.
But I mean, I've been on the front lines of this thing for a very long time. So we finally here.
Right. But so one of the things that I is the fact that you actually have been in a cult before. The thing that you say when you talk about, that the United Church was the United House of Prayer is that if you weren't born into this thing, wouldn't know about this thing, and that really goes. So it sounds like you were raised up. So let's like talk about VoodooBae. Actually, Akia Ma'at, what's your real your Akia Ma'at was how I knew you, aka Amatola. What is your upbringing? What brought you? What made you actually even be a part of something like this? What's your upbringing? What's your background?
So essentially, like I said, if you wasn't raised in this thing, you probably won't know about this thing because it's very generational. Families are born into this, and then their children, and then their children's children's children. So my great grandfather helped found the church. Then, of course, my family members were part of it. My grandmother, my father was the one who initially took me to the church from the time I can remember. I grew up in the church. And I always joke and say, thankfully, that my family was sinners. So we were only up to about waist deep, not neck deep. And what I mean by that is we weren't, there every Sunday and every Wednesday, and our whole life wasn't wrapped up. We didn't live in one of their properties and, all of that thing, which, I'm grateful for because it gave me room to actually exit because so many people are so deep into this thing, generation after generation, that they really don't even have an out. And so, I grew up in the church, going mostly on, convocation, Easter Sundays, and stuff like that. But again, which amazes me that if you don't know about this, if you weren't raised in it, you wouldn't know about it because it's one of the largest churches in the country. They have a church in every major city and several in like Charlotte and these kind of areas like in the South, and they have a big one in DC, and so there's one in every city, but you drive right past it and don't even know it.
Wow. You said your grandfather helped to start the church. What?
Yeah, so he and Daddy Grace intermingled, and I don't know a lot of the details of that. I just know that that's where our association with them started.
Wow.
And then, it passed on through generations, and my grandmother was a devout member. And then, of course, my father.
So is it like any colorism in the church? Is it more because him being from Cape Verde? You know,
Right.
Cape Verdeans usually don't even consider themselves to be African American. You know,
Right. You know, I didn't experience that personally because there was some of everybody, right? However, when this video went viral, when these videos went viral, I had so many of the members reach out to me, and one of them did make mention that there was this issue with Daddy Bailey because he didn't look like the rest of them. Now, if you go look at McCullough, you go look at Grace, you go look at Madison, they were on the lighter side, lighter side of things, curly hair, had that aesthetic. Bailey looked completely different than any of the rest of the bishops. And they made mention of that, but I didn't have any firsthand, you know what I mean? Because when I was there, I wouldn't have even been privy to something like that. I do recall this though. All of the maids were pretty little girls. So,
little
you know.
little girls. I mean, what age little girl?
Um 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. You know what I mean? Like they go up in the rank, but they're definitely young girls.
And you mentioned that these maids would actually fan Daddy. I mean, let's get a little bit into the story. Like you, for those that didn't see the actual short where she actually talked about like this church, I want you to get into it. Like, what made this church a cult?
Oh, what makes this church a cult? I mean, I think at any junction where you replace God with a human being, with a man, and that man becomes all knowing, becomes the end all be all, and you begin to replace the name of Jesus or the name of God. And for the record, everybody, I am not a Christian. Okay. But however, if you are, right, if you claim to be a Christian and you then begin to replace Jesus or God with sweet daddy, we have
What?
veered off into the
When
to
they
the red,
changed the whole Bible and put Sweet Daddy in there, and Sweet Daddy said, like,
like
the whole
the songs that they sing, the hymns that they sing. When you go into the church, there's a picture of Jesus somewhere on the side wall, but when you walk into the church, at the foot of the church, in above the throne that he sits in, is huge pictures of sweet daddy. They wear his pin and picture, and and I didn't deem this church a cult, right? I didn't decide that they were a cult. The powers that be did. So here we are.
Who is the powers that be though?
Whoever they are, I don't know, but whoever they are.
Somebody said it was a cult. I don't know, I'm not sure who, but somebody said it was a cult. I'm not gonna say nothing, but
That's why I said in my videos, here's the information. You decide for yourself.
is
Is
it
it
a cult or is it not a cult? Right.
is it or is it not? It's for you to decide. I'm gonna give y'all the information, and then
Honey,
do with that what you
I
will.
heard they sing a song, Daddy is the
The
best
best thing.
that
Yes.
ever happened.
Happened. Yes.
Daddy is the best thing. And they was getting down. Daddy is
Yeah.
the best thing and then you want to talk about the craziest thing is to find out that James Brown actually attended this church.
James James Brown was a member of the House of Prayer. And that musical prowess, because let me just say this, you know, there are no bands like the hip hop bands. There are no bands like the House of Prayer bands. And they create some amazing musicians. James Brown being one of them. That zest, that those horn sections that he had, that was all from the House of Prayer.
Like, were they actually members of the House of Prayer that were backing them up? Like were they allowed to play backup for James Brown, or were they only allowed to play?
I don't know what his band members were, and if he took any of the horn players from the House of Prayer, I don't know. He was a member himself. Now, who he took with him, I don't know.
Did he get some of his you think some of the style of preaching? I mean, that get up. I mean, was that
Yes,
that's awesome?
absolutely.
Wow.
Yes.
So
Yes.
that Sweet Daddy and also and the King James Brown. Wow. James Brown
Right,
got his whole swag from Sweet Daddy.
right.
Wow. So which Sweet Daddy's pictures on the thing? Does it change up every year, or is it just constantly just?
No, it doesn't change up every year. They are Sweet Daddy until they make their transition.
So
And
it's
then,
almost like the Pope.
I'm sorry,
It's almost like the Pope.
I guess you would say, I guess you would say that, yeah. So they're Sweet Daddy until they pass away, and then a new Sweet Daddy is elected or appointed, or, whatever the process is. They just recently got a new Sweet Daddy because Bailey passed away unexpectedly during convocation.
What? During the service?
So convocation is, the time of the year, and he travels around and goes to the different churches, in different cities and all of these things. And it's a big thing. And during that time, he passed away.
Wow.
Not at church. I believe he
Oh,
passed away at home. I don't know the details.
man, but I've been watching like some actual interviews with other members of House of Prayer and how they talked about that they didn't get paid, the band members didn't get paid. They'd have to practice like for hours on end, like throughout the week. Like you'd have thought it was like, man, just their whole life, like from the age of 7. Like this
Yeah.
one guy, I think he was a piano player. Oh no, or
Mhm.
a drummer. He said he had to practice from the age of 7 every single day for that band, to be in that band.
Absolutely. It
And he didn't
encompasses
learn
their
how
whole
to
life.
read or anything. It was all by ear. They had to learn by ear, how to play by ear.
Hmm. Shout out to the U-Hop bands, because you can't do nothing but give them their flowers. Like, they're amazing, truly amazing musicians. And not for nothing, they are the spirit behind that church. They drive the spirit that moves in that church. And it encompasses their whole life. From again, the time they are children, a horn is put in their hands, and that is what they do, and they dedicate their life to that.
And another thing I heard is that, like, from people that have actually been to the church, is like they're not just dancing normal. Like it's a club like scene. It's almost like they're at the club. When they get the music going, they said they even got some like tight little red out. She said that she went over there and they had a red dresses on. I'm not sure why. Everybody had on red, and they
Mm.
were
I don't know.
dancing.
That could have been their usher colors. I don't really know, but you know, if you've ever heard a U-Hop band, it is not what you would normally know as gospel music, right? The only thing that it can be compared to would be like a New Orleans brass band, right? That's the sound. It echoes brass bands. And so it is a party, essentially a party for Sweet Daddy.
So okay, so that band is playing throughout, and then they're and then that is bringing a huge spirit, and getting everybody hype and crunk, and I also heard that there was a lot of like I don't know, kind of like that people in that church only kind of hang out amongst people within that church.
Very common. They hang out amongst each other, they date amongst each other, they, marry amongst each other. Because can you imagine meeting somebody randomly on the street and be like, hey, come to my church? And by the way, we call our bishop Sweet Daddy. And like, the average person would be like, what the hell are you talking about?
Right,
Right?
and then to go to that church and hear instead of Jesus is the best thing, that Daddy is the best thing.
Correct. You would
And I
get your
heard
ass
too,
up and
like during COVID, they were becoming super spreaders.
mhm.
And
I shared, one of the members sent me the letter that was sent out to them from Sweet Daddy, essentially saying, you better have my money.
right, you gotta still pay, even if you don't cut,
Right.
you gotta still pay them tithes.
Correct. I
So
don't
tell
care
me
about
about
no
how like the
loaner.
whole money part of it was. I heard that he kind of they pretty much used to cart him around a chariot as he just took the money out of people's hands as they like just
Correct. Absolutely correct. He, would show up in his Cadillac with his procession of vehicles, and, you know, get whisked in his chariot and red carpet and all the things, you know what I'm saying? And people would hold up money and they would come by, he would come around and take the money from them and they would fall out and catch the Holy Ghost. And, it was a sight to see.
You know what? He had a church in Detroit. I'm not just now realizing that. That is the story I was told by my mentor about a guy named Sweet Daddy. Oh my, I'm just now putting it together that this is the same guy. He had a big church in Detroit. And yet I think he was talking about the complication with the whole thing with the Cadillac and things like that. My mentor Mike Banks was telling me about this. That is interesting. So considering, I think there was a whole expose about how they kicked out some old lady out of her apartment. There's so much property that this church owns.
Yes. It's crazy. Like, because, and a lot of people will sell that as this great thing, right? Oh, they own their apartment buildings, they put their members in there, they do this, they do that. And true indeed. But when that becomes the jail you gonna rot in, is it really a good thing? So when I made these videos, right, the first one I made was a Stitch of Jasmine's video. I didn't put any extra into this video. It wasn't something that I curated. I didn't think about it. I wasn't, you know what I mean, going out of my way. I didn't intend for it to go viral, is what I'm saying. And it went viral. The reason I kept making videos was because immediately it went viral, members started reaching out to me with their stories, right? And talking about how they couldn't get out, talking about how their whole family was involved in this, how they live in these housings, and if they don't participate in the church or if they speak out, how they were attacked, how they will get kicked out, how they'll be ostracized from their family, how, and that was what made me keep talking. That's what made me keep doing videos.
So give us an example of like one of the families that and why would they kick them out? Is it because they were unable to pay or give money anymore?
I mean, you have to be an active participant. I mean, obviously, if you're getting a letter sent out during a global pandemic that tells you better bring your butt to church and bring me my tithes, I think we get the gist, right? So you can't just not participate. That's not how that works. And again, because these members kept reaching out to me and telling me their stories was the reason that I kept making videos. The video took on a life of its own. I didn't put much thought into it in the beginning, right? But when you have so much of your life wrapped up in one place, and this place has deep ties. I've gotten death threats. Wow. I have been threatened. You know what I'm saying? Countless times because of these videos. And there's been so many, go to my videos and go through the comments. You'll see people saying, oh my God, I can't believe you're speaking. I can't believe you're saying this. Oh my God, you better watch out. You better be careful. Why would I need to be careful? Why?
For a Christian church.
Right. Why should I be afraid of a Christian church? What is going to happen?
Wow.
And that just proves the point.
That's a cult. Only a cult.
I didn't deem them a cult, but y'all sure act like cult members. Y'all sure. And I didn't share anything. There's a lot of things that I knew and know that I didn't share. Because for me, it was like, unless you had actual receipts, actual things that could be put out, I wasn't going to say it. Whether I knew it to be true or not, I wasn't going to say it, right? So I held a lot back. Everything that I shared in those videos are literally things that you could just go and if you participated, you could see it, with the exception of that letter, right? Because that was only sent to the members. But other than that, everything else was like, I just brought eyes to the situation. But if you walked in, and not that you could, but if you walked into any one of those churches, you could see anything that I talked about.
So are regular people allowed to go into the church, or do you have to be a member first? Is there like a vetting before you can even come into the church?
So you can go in, but if you walk in and they don't recognize you, you can best believe somebody's going to walk up to you and be like, who are you? Who's your family? Where did you come from? How did you know about us? How did you get here?
What?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Oh man. So yeah, that wow. So it's very exclusive, this church. Like it's definitely family oriented. You cannot just walk up in there and be and just
I mean, you can. I mean, the doors are there. You can go in, but you are definitely not going to go unnoticed. You
wow.
can't just, yeah.
And you better give us some money too on top of that.
I
So
mean, the plate gonna go around. I suggest you put some in it.
so the one thing I saw it was an old lady. She was in her 70s. The story was, and I guess something happened to where she was unable to pay tithes anymore. Hey, Peach Tea. She was unable to pay tithes, and so they just put her stuff out on the street. And she had been living in that housing place for like 40 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I don't need to explain that. It explained itself, didn't it? I mean, there are many stories. I didn't even get into in my videos the financials of it all. I talked about, you know, the passing of the money. I talked about, some of the properties that they own or whatever, but I didn't get into some of the more salacious things that have happened when it comes to those finances. But you're talking about millions and millions of dollars of property and you know, I mean, there are cafeterias and food and restaurants alone, not to mention the countless mansions and land and, just all the things that they do. And I know they do things in their community, for some of their members, but to paint it as something overarchingly good would be extremely disingenuous.
Mm. Right, because anybody that would take out a 70-year-old woman because because I mean she's on Social Security and can't afford to keep up her regular tithe amount, and you just
Right.
throw her out on the street. That's terrible, right?
It is terrible. And if it's about the church, and making sure that your members have someplace to live, wouldn't an elderly woman qualify?
Yeah.
Because there's more than enough money. Like there was no reason to kick her out. It's not like the rent, the property mortgage wasn't being paid or whatever. You get what I'm saying? Her little money that she would have paid wasn't going to make or break anything. So what is the reason?
So
Right?
yeah, so earlier in this conversation we talked about patriarchy, right? Now, from what I understand, most churches are usually primarily run by women. They're attended by women. Is this church the same where it's pretty much ran? Like, I mean, even though you have daddy at the top, right? Are women at the backbone of this whole church, or is it mainly male dominated?
So let me just preface this answer by saying this. A woman's presence does not a matriarchy make. Patriarchy lives on the back of women. So even if there's women present, it doesn't really matter because what they are upholding is the patriarchy. So let me just say that before I answer this. There are plenty of women, on the usher board and the maids and all the other things that they do. But I mean, at the head of leadership is definitely men. But at the foundation, it is still ran on the backs of women, still. And that's the way patriarchy functions. You have to have women participants, the pygmishas, if you will, that are willing to stand guard and you know do the due diligence. So they are there and they participate, but at the head of it, the men, do run it. I don't think that I have ever seen a woman preacher in the house of prayer. I have never seen one. I'm not saying there isn't one. If somebody knows of one, please correct me. I have never seen one. Now there could be. I've never seen her. So yeah.
Administratively, though, a lot of times it's usually women that kind of run the back offices of places. Like even Motown, for instance, was ran primarily by women. The church has been generally, but you're saying that but women are not allowed to be at the pulpit. You'll never see a
I
female.
don't know if they're allowed or not. I've never seen one.
There's not. So you don't think there's gonna ever be a sweet mama up in the house?
Ain't never gonna be a sweet mom.
There's no change.
Now, I can tell you that. I can tell you that for sure. There's never gonna be a sweet mama.
So, how do you think? How do they like pass down who's going to be the next sweet daddy? Because you say that one sweet daddy passed away. How do they determine who's the next sweet daddy?
I believe there is some sort of election. I believe there is a board. I was under the impression before that the previous sweet daddy selected or nominated the next one. But from what I understand now, there's some sort of board or he's elected.
By who? By the people of the church, or just by?
No, I think just by the board, not by the people of the church. I don't believe, but don't quote me. So if you are an upstanding member, citizen of the United Health Prayer, put it in the chat.
Right. Right. Wow. This is a huge church that's probably worth billions.
Correct.
If you combine all of it, I mean, it probably puts it's probably up there with the Scientology and the Jehovah Witness churches and Mormon. Like, as far as the amount of churches that they have, 200 or more churches countrywide, statewide. And are they also have them overseas, internationally as well?
I don't know. That's a great question. I don't know. I know they have over 200 churches here in the U.S., one in every major city. And like I said, several. And Charlotte is kind of like a hub for them. But they're in Savannah, they're in Charlotte, they're in LA, they're in DC, they're, in South Carolina, pretty much everywhere you can think.
So okay, you started off in the house of prayer and now you're called VoodooBae. How does one transition from such an exclusive church with such a tight rein on people where you can't do anything, your money goes to the church, you only talk to people that's within the church, it's basically like so tightly wound where you pretty much are spending every single day at this church, correct? Because I'm sure the church like that, you got to go to, they probably have a program every single day that you got to go to, especially kids. They don't keep you in that church. Monday gonna be Bible study, Tuesday Bible study, Wednesday choir rehearsal, the dance, the whatever team, and they gonna make sure there's an activity, and you get paid for each one little thing, knickknack stuff. They stay in your pocket.
Yeah, that's why I said early on. Thankfully, my family was sinners, so we were only about waist deep into the church, not neck deep. So because my father was the way he was, we weren't there every day all the time, right? So it put me in, and my mother wasn't a member. So that was also the thing. So when my parents split, I no longer went to the church because I was with my mom. And so, I didn't go anymore because my father was the one who I went with. And, once we were not living in the house with him anymore, that ended. So, but I was always a curious one. I was always the one asking questions. I was always the one that was like, yeah, this don't make no damn sense. Okay. And why are we calling this man Sweet Daddy? I'm so confused. And I just never was really fully with it, to be honest with you. You know what I mean? I always was kind of side-eyeing the whole thing. Love the music, love the food, whatever, whatnot. But I never was bought in 100%, which is, the reason why I was able to leave. And I left when I was fairly young. I was a young teenager, 12, 13, when my parents split. So, it made it easier for me to leave.
So what made you get into African spirituality? That's a huge leap from being in the house of prayer, a Christian, not only just a regular Christian, but into like a Christianity where it's almost like you worship Sweet Daddy, to Ian Ifa, a high priest of Ifa. How does that transition one make?
Oh, was it a journey? So I'm gonna just say this, and they can be mad if they want. churches like this, we think all that's going on is Jesus. But I can tell you right now that it's a lot of other things going on in them walls besides just praising Jesus. Now you can take that however you want it. But I know what I know, and I know what I felt, and I know what I saw. Right? Um, I was always a spirituality seeker, right? And anybody who has ended up in an African traditional spiritual practices understands that it's a matter of destiny. They found me before I ever knew they existed, right? I met somebody one day and they asked me a question. They were like, how could the same people that oppress you give you God? And they were speaking about Christianity in general. They weren't speaking about the house prayer. And that question planted a seed and took me on a journey because I was like, how could they? What did my ancestors believe prior to enslavement? And it certainly wasn't no Jesus. And so that was where the journey began. And um, when I left Christianity, my first stop was Comedics, because I think back then that was all of our first stop, right? And I began studying under some of the greats like Bobby Hemmett and Phil Valentine and M. Siddiqui and Jordan Maxwell. And I used to go to these lectures. This was before the internet. So we used to have to actually go to lectures and sit for 12 hours, with a pen and paper and a tape recorder and take notes. And I just was always a seeker of spiritual knowledge and understanding. I'm a life past 7, so that was my judge. And it started from there. And I've told the story many times about how I ended up on the mat for the first time. I was going through some things, and I, had been going through it for a couple of years, and I ended up speaking to my best friend, and she sent me to a sister named Vika Lee. And this is in LA, and I was in the conscious community. I was a proper hoteptress at the time, right? And
Hoteptress.
a proper hoteptress, honey. And I was going through something, and I was like, I just need a reading. I need somebody to tell me what's going on. And so she sent me to this man who I now know was the Baba Lorisha. I didn't know what Ifa was at the time, which was interesting because I was actually surrounded by people who were in Ifa. Shout out to Sister Ifa, who she's an ancestor now. But I had been around her and I didn't have any clue what Orisha was. I had no clue. I'd never even heard of that. And I went and I got the reading. I sat down on the mat. He threw the shells. The first thing he said to me was, one day you're going to sit on the other side of these shells. And I thought he was crazy. I was like, what the hell are you talking about? And what are you finna do with that bird? And I'm out of here. Peace. And 10 years later, I was in LA at the time. I ended up in Atlanta. And 10 years later, just as it had been told to me on that mat, I met somebody, and then the rest is history. And I was on my way to be initiated into Ifa. And obviously, there's a lot of details in between there, but essentially, that's how it happened. I got one divination by happenstance. I was told that I was going to be a priest, forgot about it, went on about my life, moved to a whole nother city across the country, randomly met somebody in a strip club of all places. And then before you know it, I was on my way to Nigeria to be initiated into Ifa, and that was in 2010.
That's crazy. So you went to Nigeria. Did you know who you were going to Nigeria with, or did you just go take a leap of faith?
So I had met a Babalawo here, and he introduced me to his Oluwo. And I had a sister friend of mine, Sister Olabisi. She is also an Egu now. She made her transition. her and I went together. I mean, I had met them here in the States, right? We had done some work here in the States, but I had been to Africa before. I gave birth to my daughter in Ghana, so I had been to Africa before, but I had never been to Nigeria. I didn't know any of them, like that. And so in essence, yeah, I took a leap of faith, but I wasn't afraid. Like I knew clearly what I was doing, and I was following my Ori. And yeah, made Ifa in 2010, made Egbe in 2012, initiated to West African Vodoun in Owida in 2013, made Oshun 2018, made Olokun 2021. So it's a continuing journey. But it all began with one divination in like 1996 or 7-ish.
So what
Uh-oh, you broke up.
to it is voodoo?
You totally broke up.
Voodoo. You say you got initiated into voodoo.
To West African voodoo, which is not the same as Haitian voodoo, right? But more so connected to like Mami Wata in Benin Republic.
Okay.
Hmm.
Okay.
Uh-oh. Where'd she go? I think she left me all by myself, y'all.
I had to pick up my daughter. Hold on.
Oh, the ringing of it all.
Wait a minute. Oh no. All right. It's still doing it.
Mm-mm-mm.
Okay, let me. Okay, let's try this again. All right. Okay. Okay. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
I'm sorry, I had to take my daughter. So I was like transitioning from phone to phone.
It's okay.
Yeah. So Voodoo is Mami Wata. What does that mean?
You're not familiar with Mami Wata, which is another deity, divinity out of Benin. Another
The
ocean
audience
water
might,
deity.
yeah,
Say
the
again?
audience might not be. We need to educate the audience in case they're
Oh, so sorry. I forget that I'm talking to them, not you. I'm like, girl, you don't know who Mami Wata is?
right.
Essentially, Mami Wata is another divinity. I did not initiate into Mami Wata, but to give a name to something that they could associate with West African Voodoo, Mami Wata is something that they would understand. So she's another ocean divinity. Yeah.
Similar to like Yemaya or something in Ghana.
Similar, yes. Go look her up. Different energy, like different energy, but in essence, similar.
Okay. And what made you have to? So it looks like you went to Nigeria. You got your egg you got all these different orishas and crown and different things. And then what turned you to get the stuff to in Voodoo? Like, what made you get into that? Like, did you meet someone and they said, "Hey, you can do this," or did it come in a reading? Like, how did it even?
It's all destiny. It all comes out in that way. I never I was never seeking those things. You know, some people find out about it and they're looking. I was never. It always found me. And I just heeded the call. So we have a saying that the Orisha's words do not fall on the ground. When something is told to me on the mat or in divination, I listen.
Right. So they
So every
explain to them what the mat is, because you're saying the mat. They might not know what the mat is.
right, to sit on the mat, when we do divination, there's a literal mat that we sit on, but it is also a phrase that we use as a metaphor. To sit on the mat means to sit at the feet of the Orisha and get idasa or get dafa, get divination, get a reading.
Right. And so Dafa, a reading is very detrimental or a very central part of like the E5 tradition, correct?
Correct. Correct. I mean, it is, you know, it is the mouthpiece of the Orisha.
Mm. And E5 being an Orisha itself speaks to the person to about it, his or her destiny, correct?
Correct. Rumila is an Orisha like every other Orisha. Ifa is the binary system.
The binary system. Interesting. So just like a computer, right? Zeros and ones, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, all computer systems are fashioned after Ifa, binary system. That is where they get the code from.
So when you decided to get into this religion, coming out of Christianity, what was the what kind of a backlash did you like experience?
None really, not me. So I know a lot of people, and I just say that for me because I was pretty much a rebel my whole life. I did whatever the hell I wanted to do, and flew by the seat of my own drum, right? So I didn't deal with a lot of that. Now of course, in general life, because I was really immersed in the Black conscious community prior to initiating into Orisha, right? Um, and I didn't have a lot of super uber Christian friends. Now, on a general basis, yeah, people um had said what they had to say, and I was doing this thing before, you know, Beyonce made it popular, right? So on a general basis, but I didn't experience that heavy like in my family necessarily, because they was just like, oh, she's just being her. You know what I'm saying? She always been on some so just another thing.
I have a question too. Is that okay? So we talk about patriarchy. We talked about it in church, even though that church is more of a cult like group. Most Christian churches are headed by men, with the women kind of like running things and kind of like running things. Is African spirituality any different?
Say it again.
Is African spirituality any different when it comes to patriarchy? When it comes to the men and how they run things?
So the unfortunate truth is that patriarchy is in everything everywhere. And it has seeped itself into everything. And if you don't identify it, then you would think that that is the way the tradition is supposed to be, but it's absolutely not. Um, this is why we see this elevation of Ifa or Urumila and the Babalao to this place of superiority in these traditions. This is patriarchy. This is um, the byproduct of patriarchy inside of Orisha tradition itself. Because essentially what we know is that the Dilogun, right, the Irin Dilogun, which is the Kari cell divination, predates the Ikin and the Opwele, which is the divination system of the Babalawo. The Olokan and the Olorisha predate them. And who were those priests? Women. And you know, if you get into the dogma, I'm not religious. I'm spiritual. If you get into the dogma, then you participate in the patriarchy that is inside of African traditions, African traditional spirituality as it pertains to Ifa or Orisha practice. But if you understand the esoterics, if you understand the foundation of this thing, then patriarchy and those ideologies really have no place. And things have been manipulated and twisted in order to elevate men in this tradition, in the culture, and in everywhere. And we have to actively fight against that. And that's why I tell women all the time, if you're coming into this tradition, find a place where women are in leadership, not where they are in servitude, where they are in leadership. Because otherwise, you are just participating in patriarchy all over again.
Would you say that's with every spirituality? Because I mean, I tend to think that women are more spiritual than men
They
are.
are. They absolutely are. And that was always known, that women are spiritually superior to men. And we always know that. We always knew that. Which is why there have been things done to bind women, to put them in these subservient positions, to keep them from having the power. I mean, that's why those things are done.
Right, because in the Christian church, a woman's not even allowed to supposedly be on the pulpit, right? But
Exactly.
in the daddy church, there'll never be a mommy, a big sweet mommy, a big sweet mama, or whatever.
There will not.
Right,
There absolutely will not.
And will there ever be a female pope? I'm sure not.
I'm sure not.
The nuns pretty much, hey, they'll pray for you in a group and as females and dedicate their whole lives to virginity and this, that, the other, whatever they're doing. And then you have, like, when you go into the Baptist church, you have all the big mamas that are kind of supporting that pastor. Like, if you actually look at the whole construct of spirituality, women are the driving force.
Mm-hmm.
So so it's interesting to find that somehow a man would place himself at the top of that and want to be worshipped.
It's ridiculous. But it can only stop when women stop participating in it. I mean, men gonna do whatever we allow them to do. And I will always tell people this: when men are in power, women are in danger. That is what it is. It has been proven time and time again. And these pastors, preachers, and babalawos get away with so much, it doesn't even make sense. And now, as we see this movement with women, this awakening of women, we women priests, we are out here, we are active, we are running our houses, we are doing the thing, right? And if you're coming into these traditions, find us. Get in a safe space with women where you can be elevated to, the place that you need to be and taught properly. A person who is trying to oppress you cannot give you freedom and liberation through spirituality. And I've told this story several times about this Babalao that worked at my temple. And he had just had a baby. And so we were all congratulating him, and his face was kind of like, squeezed up. And I was like, so what's wrong? And he says, well, I had a girl, and I was like, so what's wrong with having a girl? And he was like, well, I'm a Babalao. I wanted to have a boy so that I could teach him Ifa. And I said, well, in Ishashi, we crown Iyanifa. Why don't you just initiate her to Ifa and teach her Ifa? And he says, oh, no, you can't teach a woman Ifa deep, because then she will puff up her chest and won't obey her husband. The silence. You could have heard a mouse fart. Everybody was looking at him, looking at me, looking at him, looking at what's she finna do? He no longer works at our temple. But I would just say this: it was a firsthand look into what I just said. The same people that want to oppress you cannot give you liberation. How could a person who believes that by teaching the very thing that you are coming there to learn would make you not obey a man? They'll never give it to you. You cannot liberate somebody while trying to oppress them. And women have to understand, and I had to learn this, just because you're coming into African spirituality does not mean that you are not dealing with patriarchy, because it is the most stealth, diabolical psychosis that affects us globally. It is everywhere and in everything.
You know, and it's interesting. One part of like that Ifa aspect of, you know, the E and Ifa, that story. If people don't know, there's a thing called Odu, which is actually the word, right?
Mm-hmm.
People say that if you're a woman and you get initiated, you cannot see Odu because Odu is jealous, and Odu is the wife of Oromila, and she's jealous, and I guess she'll try to kill you if you look at her. Some kind of crazy story. And it's like, what?
How? And this is, you know, and again, the five evangelists and the dogma and all of this, and they will argue this point, right? But here I'm an Ori evangelist, and Ori is the thing that we turn to first and foremost.
And what is Ori?
Ori is your head, that voice inside of your head. And when you tell me some nonsense, and my Ori says, "Baby, I don't think so," that don't make no damn sense, right? So the whole old story of Vodoun, it doesn't make any logical sense. At the end of the day, how are men going to tell women that they cannot see women, womb, that which we are, you are now gatekeeping from us? You are not going to ever tell me that men were assigned with being the guardians of the womb and the woman. No, it is being coveted because it is the power. And they know the power of the word in the womb, which is Odu. And I've went round and round about this, and I don't even argue with them anymore because you can't tell me what I already know, right? And I'm not religious, so whatever.
But you know what? If you
believe whatever you want, believe whatever you want, but it's a no for me. And at the end of the day, I had this, like, I hate this word download, but I had this epiphany. And I was like, what if Odu is a woman who's been kidnapped and being held hostage? And they made up this story so that nobody would come looking for her.
Wow.
And it just sat on my spirit like, wow. What if it, you know, what if it's our job to free her, right? Because at the end of the day, you cannot tell me that I cannot see myself.
Wow.
So there you go. And you know, that is a controversial thought. That is a controversial thing, but it is what it is. And I am for returning these traditions and the world in general back to its natural state. And we are living in the upside down. So be mad at your mom.
And it's the year, what is the year of the age of Aquarius, and so the women are starting to kind of like come out and like be like, wait a minute, this ain't right. You know, what I'm being told is not right. I don't believe it. Whereas before we weren't doing that. And also, I was going to say is that if you actually equate Odu in that whole story, it's like, you know what, in the beginning, if you go to Christianity, in the beginning, the word was God, the word was with God. Wait, the word was with God and the word was God.
Correct.
So that means that we can't see God? Is that what they're saying?
The Black woman is God. The divine feminine, the feminine energy is God. And I don't care. The divine feminine doesn't have an equal opposite. We only have creations of and mutations of us. And so at the end of the day, the word, women speak incantations. We give birth to things through our words and through our wombs. I am not so dogmatic that my Ori doesn't work and that I believe every single thing that you lay at my feet without critical thinking. No. And I don't suggest any woman does that with any spiritual practice. I don't care what it is. If it don't sit right in your spirit, ask questions and ask more questions until it makes sense. And if it don't make sense, don't eat it, sis.
Listen, you know, I'm going to be having a young lady on here called the Pashada, and she was a part of the Hebrew Israelites.
Ooh, Lord.
We are doing a cult-like behavior on her, and I would love for you to be there. So I'm not sure if you got to see some of the things. This series I'm doing, I'm talking to different women that have been in these cults. cult. In the series, it's called Cult-like Behavior. The first person I interviewed was a lady that was in the Dr. York, the Malachi's Wapian Nation, and it's just baffling to me how these cults they start off. I'm not sure if the person starts off with a good thing in mind, and then it gets out of control, and then it becomes a weird sexual thing, where because once they get this so much power, they want to exert power, especially over young girls.
Mm-hmm.
And I never understood that, you know.
Absolute power corrupts absolutely.
And especially if they begin to abuse the women, and
it's always that. It's always that. It is always that. I don't care what belief, what system, Christianity, Hebrew Israelites, the Yorkians, the Nuwapians, the Babas, I don't care. They all do the same when they get a taste of power. It all ends up with the same intention: access and abuse and control of women. Full stop.
Wow.
We see it time and time again. We don't have to make it up. We can literally just go and see it. And it has nothing to do with race, creed, color, social status, financial status. It has nothing to do with that. It is male-centered, because you find this behavior globally. It doesn't matter culture. It does not matter. They do this shit wherever they go.
Wow. Man, so what is your suggestion? I mean, like I said, we have people that have been, like, we talked about the Night House of Prayer. We talked about your journey into African spirituality. What was the actual reason why you chose that over like the church or like into like the organized religion?
Destiny. And there are things about African spirituality that I love. One of the main things that I love is that it's not one size fits all. It's about destiny. The wine that makes one man laugh may kill another. It's all about you. It's about connecting with the you, which is your Ori. Speaking of Ori, come to my Ori class on February 25th, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
We're about to wrap this up because we only been for an hour, but I wanted to like to really get like a great closing when you talk about all these different things. I wanted to like talk about what led you into these things, your early life, and then where you are now, and what your plans are. One thing that you talk about is like men are emotional. So
Yes,
you have T-shirts that say "emotional," HEMOTIONA. So let's talk. So let's where is VoodooBae right now?
Where am I right now? I am on the front lines of creating the blueprint for the matriarchy moving forward. The solutions to the problem. We've identified the problem. We've talked about the problem for long enough. What are we as women going to do about it? What are we creating together that is going to be our solutions, looking to each other, creating sisterhoods, creating spiritual houses and systems and structures that protect us? We are on the front lines of a revolution that is shifting this power structure. And we have to know what we're doing. You can't know where you're going if you don't know where you've been. So creating a blueprint of understanding of what a matriarchy looks like, because a lot of people think that just the presence of women makes a matriarchy, and it does not. But helping women unpack their internalized misogyny, war, their internalized patriarchy that they, perpetuate on themselves and other women, learning how to be in sisterhood, healing the mother wound, all of those things. That's what I'm investing my time and energy, and everything that I'm doing moving forward is in line with that. I have a book coming out, The Power and Promise of the Feminine. And, it just focusing on healing women, because when we heal, when we change, everything else changes.
So there's other women out here that are kind of like along the same lines. However, they feel like men should be eradicated altogether. Like you have like your Priscilla Parks that are pretty much like, we just need to do away with the men altogether. And men are incapable of love; they're completely incapable. And then but then you got women that have little boys. So there's some people have like a conflict within that thing.
Mhm.
What do you say about that? Do you think that is that also a way to kind of go about it, or are we being a little bit too extreme when we go that way? Or what is your answer to like how these women should come together? Should they be that extreme? Should it be that?
I understand the extremism because I understand we're in extreme circumstances. That extreme response is not for nothing. Like we didn't just make that shit up, right? We've been under extreme attack and warfare for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. So I understand women like that, right? I get it. I would say this. I don't feel like women should be investing any time and energy into helping, healing, or fixing grown ass men, right? You want to do something, you care about men or males, you have male children, fix yourself and raise a generation of men that are outside of the psychosis of patriarchy. Because you cannot have men that are not everything that Priscilla talks about, that are reared in this psychosis. You cannot do it. It's not possible. It cannot. So when she says they're not capable of love, these men, she is absolutely correct. Right? So
It's up to us as women, right? Because we are the child, the people that give birth to men. Is it also our responsibility that men are who they should be, or that we did we make a mistake somewhere as women?
I don't know if we made a mistake, but I will say this: patriarchy was forced onto us through violence, right? So at some point, we had to do what we had to do to survive. And then we pass that down to our daughters inside of the patriarchal structure. And then we only taught what we knew and we became what we were taught, right? We have to break that cycle because that is not our nature. And so, that being the case, we have the responsibility of undoing what was done to us so that we can heal ourselves and the generations moving forward. We own the wombs. And I'm sorry, we can talk about men's responsibilities and two things can be true at the same time, but we can't fix them. We can only fix us. And they can't do what we don't allow them to do, right? They can't have children we don't allow them to have. So, that being the case, I'm all about self accountability, not blame. What can we do to fix our shit? Sorry, I don't know if I'm supposed to cuss. What can we do to fix our circumstances? What can we do in order to create a better environment for us and make choices with the information that we have? We have to get out of the Cinderella story. Get out of the fairy tale, get out of the lies of patriarchy that some man's gonna, sweep us up and take care of us and provide and protect and all that bull crap, and live in the reality of what is really happening and govern ourselves accordingly and treat them like they are, not like we want them to be. And when we do that, we will have greater success. We treat men like the potential in the fairy tale that we see in our minds and not who they have proven themselves to be over and over again.
Like a sweet daddy.
Like a sweet daddy, baby. We all out here getting pimped by a sweet daddy. And that sweet daddy is called patriarchy.
Right. So bring it full circle.
So bring it full circle, baby. Patriarchy is
bring it back to
sweet daddy.
Cult-like behavior, okay? And that's what it really boils down to, is that we as women tend to join cults. Because when I see all these different cults, who is at the forefront? Who is the main one hollering? Women.
Yes. It's that male worship.
Bring our children into it. We bring our kids and we raise our children in this because some guy said their name is Sweet Daddy.
Child.
Who you think wrote "Daddy is the best thing that ever happened to me"? You think it was a woman or a man?
It's the best.
Who you think replaced Jesus with Daddy, honey? You think he was messing with that woman that was like, and she was like, Daddy? She was probably playing the dang on piano and was like, Daddy.
Yeah, and she put that from the bottom of her soul.
She sang a whole song. They don't even know there's a whole story behind that whole song.
Yeah, I cannot.
I'm messing around.
But thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. There's so much more to talk about, and I really hope women are finding themselves and finding their voice and feeling the energy that is happening right now. So, yeah.
Well, VoodooBae, I want to thank you for alchemizing energy with us. I appreciate you. We're gonna have you back because we want to talk some more about this patriarchy thing that we got to get a hold of. Okay, you got to control.
Anytime. Anytime.
That'll probably be our next subject, and we'll probably come here with some more guests that we can all like just have like a whole girls night out. We just talk about this.
Sounds good.
Especially with all this going on YouTube, people making 45 videos about some man that was crazy as heck. So we'll talk about that a little later. Thank you so much, VoodooBae. Give us all your social media. Where can we find you?
So, The Real VoodooBae. No underscores, no numbers, no letters, no extra nothing. Just The Real VoodooBae on all platforms. I'm on YouTube. I'm on TikTok. That's my main platform. And Instagram. So you can follow me on all of those places. And if you're into cosmetics, of course, this is one of my lippies, Coven, VoodooBae.shop. Spiritual products, you can find me on Etsy at VoodooBae Apothecary. You know, link in my bio. You can find all the things there.
Okay, and so also, could you paste in the you know what? Was it VoodooBae Cosmetics?
VoodooBae.shop is the cosmetics.
Okay, we're gonna put it all below on the YouTube. Also, this lipstick, this beautiful lipstick you're wearing, it's red.
Thank you.
Is that also a part of your cosmetic line?
It is. It's called Coven.
Yes. All right, you guys. Thank you guys for watching us. Thank you, VoodooBae, for attending. This was great.
Absolutely. I will be, back hopefully if you have me back.
For sure, I definitely will.
All right.